There we go. Cool. All right, should we do it?
Yes, do it.
Because after this, now I found out that I might be getting what me and Nadia have affectionately dubbed treatser, because we've been on a fast food no-go zone because our oven broke over Christmas, so we had a lot of fast food while our oven was broke. Now it's fixed. We've been not eating fast food for ages, and tonight we're having what we're dubbing treatser, which is treat pizza.
Nice.
So
is it like one pizza? Pizza each?
Pizza each, mate. Pizza each. We're going nuts.
Nice.
We're going nuts.
Nice.
Treatser.
Oh,
From one of our favourite
jealous.
pizza places as well. It's proper thin, like Italian pizza. It's the good stuff.
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's not like a Domino's or any of that shit. Oh, it's the good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now I'm excited to finish the podcast.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've kept this in, but fundamentally what you've done here is delayed it further. Because you thought to yourself, I'll quickly tell Chris that I'm on a bit of a tight schedule because he won't ask me any questions about pizza.
If you're wondering, Chris, it's going to be a meat feast of a sorts. But I might.
But do
I
you
might
keep
go
this
for,
in because now the audience might be going, Dan's not giving his best because he's after pizza.
No, that's never going to happen, Chris. I would never shortchange them. Not with this episode, anyway. It's one of my favourites. I love this one.
Okay.
But
okay, well, it's a meat feast you're getting.
It's a bit. But I'm going for Mexican chicken.
Oh, that is why I don't get, like, without getting into another chicken debate, I don't get just plain chicken on a pizza.
Yeah, I mean, I do get it sometimes.
Make it barbecue.
It's a nice sort of proteiny bit, but a barbecue or a Mexican style chicken on a pizza is delicious, no matter what you do. It's true.
Well, enjoy your treaty pizza.
So,
treats
tell you
are
what, we haven't
good.
played. I'm going to assume that this is pre-music, which we've never done before. So I'm going to say roll the
Really?
music, and then we'll go. Yeah, because I feel like it should be the music and then me going hello and welcome to. Otherwise, it's not right.
Okay, we'll roll the the music.
Yeah, that feels inherently wrong. So yeah, I'll let you say it because you just said it.
Oh, roll the music.
Sorry, I didn't want to then go over you and do it again. But hey, we'll assume the music goes there, and then.
Well, no, because now you can't roll the music and then you did that so that you could then do the hi, it's Dan.
I know,
You
which
can't
is what
go.
I'm going to do now.
You can't
Which
after
is-
the
which
music
is
go.
what I'm going to do now.
We'll assume the music goes there.
That's for
I
me
am
to
Dan.
know to cut this bit out.
Oh, keep it all in.
Cue the music. Okay, now I'll do the actual. Hello and welcome.
Just do it. Just
Stop
you don't
it!
need to go.
I'm
You don't need to go.
I'm giving myself the edit point, Chris. Let me, so I know
they
what's
don't.
happening on an editing
mate,
perspective. You're being a dick.
The edit point is after you say cue the music and there's a bit of silence and then you say it. That's your edit point. Why do you need to go, oh, future Dan, cut this shit? Like, just cue the music, give it a few seconds, then do the fucking intro.
Can I do the podcast, Chris, please? I want pizza.
Yeah, I'm trying, mate. I'm trying.
You're not. You're hurting us now. You're hurting. You're doing more damage than good, Chris.
Right, I'm going to say cue the music. You're going to leave a couple of seconds silence.
And then I'm gonna
Then you're
stop.
going to do the hello, okay?
Okay.
Right. Cue the music.
Hello and welcome to Stephen University. This week we're discussing Greg the Babysitter and nothing of what just happened before the music. So, Chris, what was it about?
What are you having for dinner, Dan? No, right. So this episode was a flashback episode. So Greg and Stephen are chatting about the car wash.
Do we need to
And then-
deal with what just happened? I feel like we've just had a fight. Mummy and Daddy are fighting, and I feel like we need some closure here. For those listening, it's all good.
I don't feel that was a fight.
I know, but I feel like it might have sounded like one.
I think, just all you had to do was give it a few seconds.
But I decided not to, and then you criticised, and you just kept interrupting. It just made it worse. Carry on. Do the podcast. I just said we'll forget about it, and then didn't. Carry on.
So Greg starts singing a song, and we have a flashback we see him and Rose, and it's he's doing a lot of hanging around. He's hanging around by the water pads.
Mm-hmm.
He's feeling a bit useless. He goes to visit Sour Cream's mum. We realise one of my favourite parts of this episode, which is that despite the fact that it's baby Sour Cream, he's voiced by the adult actor, which made me laugh every time the baby made a noise.
Me too.
I thought that was brilliant.
I'm such a child, but yes, I am with you. Yeah,
So,
I found that funny every time.
Greg ends up babysitting,
Mm-hmm.
and he takes Sour Cream, and they end up meeting Rose. And Rose talks about her love for babies and stuff, and it's just amazing because you're sat there like, oh god, like Sour Cream might have in some ways inspired Stephen, and your mind is blown.
Yep.
And
Maybe.
then Rose lets the baby climb to the top of a Ferris wheel. Greg chases it up, gets it down. They get into a bit of scrape, and Rose helps them out. And then it ends with Greg realizing that he needs to grow up. He goes past the car wash and he starts working there. We then have, I'm sorry, it's not... if you're going to do a joke that makes a character look like an idiot, then it has to be really funny. And the end joke of what happened to baby Sour Cream, no idea, and then the star on Sour Cream,
Yeah.
is not funny enough to warrant Stephen looking like an absolute moron.
Can I just say that, this is ages ago now, like 30 episodes ago, I said at some point we will get to Nadia's favourite joke in the whole series. Nadia being my girlfriend.
Yeah.
It's that joke. That you just tore apart.
But it makes Stephen look absolutely stupid.
Yeah, a little. But it is very funny. I thought it was hysterically funny. Whatever happened to
Really?
baby Sour Cream? No one knows. Yeah.
But he calls Sour Cream Sour Cream.
That's kind of what's funny about it.
Alright.
Wouldn't it be funny if he had a different name?
No, but okay, fine. Well, we disagree on that joke.
Okay.
I loved it. I thought it was great that it was flashback. I thought it was great that we see a bit of their world. Like Sour Cream's mum, we already know she was friends with Amethyst.
Vidalia,
but,
yeah.
Like Vidalia, that's it. But you just have all these subtle indications of what their life was like and how Greg fits into this stuff. You hear a commercial
For the little butler.
But the little butler,
Little butler.
oh, and in a way, I feel they could have filled the episode with more Easter eggs like that. But I guess then it becomes that. Like I think at a later point,
such a fine line, isn't it? Because it could have just been a gallery of nods to stuff we know would have been happening around that time.
What I was going to
so
say
tempting.
is, I think at a later point, some of the Friends flashbacks arguably become that. They just become these little nods and stuff to the future until eventually they're doing a full-blown alternative reality episode, which
I stand by was really
minded
good.
that much. But
I
think it was.
Yeah, I always liked that episode. I thought it was just fun to see another way it could have turned out.
Yeah, it's hated by fans, but Dan and I oddly really both like that.
Yeah.
Episode of Friends. So yeah, I just thought this was great, just fun, just and the heaviness of the previous episode, which people listening know we watched recently and joked about. Would we be in a dark place for this because we took to themes about abusive relationships and stuff. But this one you just watch and it's just fun and insightful, and just that, and again, just that when they're sitting on the rug on the beach. And Rose and Greg are looking at Sour Cream, and you're just like, "Oh man!"
But that's
like,
what's
this
so
could be
good about this show is it can
the
go.
beginnings.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like this show can go from this really dark place where it's dealing with some very, very unsettling ideas and admittedly a positive outcome because Lapis made the right choice, obviously, at the end of that previous episode. But what's amazing to me about this show, and it still to this day boggles my mind, is how they can go from an episode like that to an episode like this that's just full of hope and joy and like light-hearted sort of. So this is just sort of fun. Like it's just. It's so few shows can flick tonally the way this show does. There are showrunners out there that would kill for the ability to create a show that has a concept as malleable as this one is to darkness or you know, deep ideas or mythology or just, you know, hanging out in the town, or like this show can do anything. Whatever you want it to do, it will shape to it. The premise is loose enough and designed well enough that you can literally just go for whatever vibe you want with an episode of this show, and it works, and it's fine, and there's no requirement for the show to be any one thing. There are certain shows that have gotten trapped in a pattern of being a thing that and everyone writing on it fears veering off course because then it wouldn't feel like the show anymore. This show makes every different vibe it goes for still inherently feel like the show, without actually needing to do any of the things necessarily that the show is known for. There's no gem monster in this episode.
Nope.
There's you know what I mean? It doesn't need it. There's no mythology in this episode in terms of the gem stuff. The only mythology we got in this episode is to do with, you know, the relationship of Steven's parents, which is equally valuable mythology-wise, to see that maybe that's the moment that maybe Rose started to think about it.
Yeah,
but when we traditionally talk about mythology, we talk about Homeworld and the rebellion and all that complicated stuff.
Not even that. I think when you talk about the mythology of his parents, it's the events and how they happened. Fundamentally, this episode isn't particularly, in my opinion, a mythology episode, because this episode did not give us any. It showed us how things happened, but in terms of what happened, it didn't give us any new information. And you could take this episode out without, and you wouldn't have necessarily missed a part of the wider what happened story.
Yeah,
so you
would miss out on the character development, though.
Yeah, no, you would, absolutely. But in terms of this mythology thing you're talking about, you couldn't take out line 3 straight to video because that's got key information. Whilst this has a hell of a lot of good character development stuff, and this isn't a criticism of the episode, I'm just merely talking about what you were just talking about there. You don't require it, and I just think it's even more commendable that it worked.
How do you?
It is the epitome in a way of a flashback episode.
Yeah, but how do you think they've achieved that? Because I was thinking about it, because I started saying there and putting credit to the concept, you know, to the design of the show from the outset. Or do you think it is just that the writers have a confidence to try all this stuff, and because they keep trying it, we're more than accepting that an episode of Steven Universe can be whatever the writer wants it to be? So is it that it is inherently a premise that is malleable, or is it that the writers have just taught us, the audience, to expect the unexpected and to expect experimental storytelling or unusual tones to episodes, or mixture of tones maybe is the better way to, because none of these are particularly experimental, but arguably they don't always, you wouldn't imagine they belong in the same show. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying is, where's the heavy lifting happening to make that work? I'm not sure.
I think it has the plot lends itself to that. The plot can be molded in any different way. In the same vein as I know we mention it a lot, but as Doctor Who. But I don't think it's as bendable as Doctor Who. I think the writers have done the work, and the show has done the work in giving us different styles of episodes and different styles of tones. In the same way that as a premise, as a plot, there's not that much difference in a way between can't think of an adult show where they're in schools. Boy Meets World, Community. Essentially, both are about a group of people in education. But same with, you didn't take away education. Both are essentially about a group of friends and community. But Community did the work in going, any week, this show could be something completely different. And the audience went along with it because it happened every week. I mean, I don't know if you remember, but when they first started doing it, because they do that people forget, they do that fairly late on in Community. It's a fair chunk of season 1 has gone by, and then you get the fried chicken episode. And when it first happened, Dan and I disagreed on that episode. I was like, they've taken this joke, spoof kind of episode thing way too far. And Dan was like, no, I think it's genius. And Dan, in the long run, was proven right, because then they did it more and more, and you learned to accept it, and you got on board with it. And I think, although there is something to be said in the plot, allows them to do all sorts of stuff. Really, it's about the way they've laid out the show and they've laid out the episodes and the fact that they've gotten us used to that.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I think I agree with the way you've summed that up. I think you're right. I think it is the writers being brave teaches you to expect it and be willing to take it on board without question and without going, does this fit the show? The show as I know it,
Because if you think about it, if every episode had involved a gem monster and none of it had ever dealt with a flashback before, you watch this episode at this point, you'd be going, this is weird.
Yeah, but you're right. It's not like this is the first time we've had an episode like this. So you think it's the writers choosing to do different things as regularly as they have done has made you willing to just go with it.
Yeah, I think the plot helps, but it's not as flexible as a person can travel anywhere in time and space. It isn't as flexible as that. It's certainly more flexible than some shows. But if you think about it, there's not particularly, another show I mention all the time, there's not particularly any more flexibility in this than there is in Power Rangers. Yet Power Rangers was so formulaic. They try and defeat the monster. They don't defeat the monster. They grow into the Megazord. They defeat the monster. So formulaic that you just expected that. This show broke that. Whereas in Power Rangers, if suddenly they defeated the monster right away and add a flashback, or do you know what I mean? You'd just be like, huh? What? It's the show has taught us to expect the unexpected.
Yeah, okay. I think it works in this case particularly well because I feel like so there's always a danger, do you not think as well? I'm moving the point slightly on because I think in summation when it comes to that question, I think I agree with you. I think you're absolutely right that it is down to the writers. Do you think as well that the other good thing here is they do keep finding interesting stories to tell? Because I think a lot of shows that do regular flashback episodes or semi-regular ones, so maybe once a season or, you know what I mean, like Friends, like we talked about with Friends, eventually you get to a point where you run out of backstory to tell. I do think it helps that in this exact specific example, in the example of the flashback episode, that the backstory to Steven Universe is so rich and so unexplored that there is joy in simply doing a story that tells us how Greg got his job at the car wash and how Rose maybe started thinking that maybe having a kid was the thing to do.
Yes, but again, they've given. Not only is it a rich backstory, but they've decided to go really specific. You didn't need to tell this story.
No.
I'm sat here going, I wonder what the moment that Rose said to Greg, we're going to have a kid, but it means I'm not going to be around anymore. I want to know what that moment looks like. I want to know what her telling the other gems what she's planning. I want to know what that looks like. I've never thought, I wonder how Greg got his job in the car wash. So
they're answering questions you never wondered about.
No, but the nicer way of phrasing that is they're asking questions I didn't know I wanted to see. But you show me it, and you show me it done well, and I want to see it.
Yeah, agreed. Do you think that? Do you think the show could ever get to a place where they're doing flashbacks, and you're just like, I don't care, like this is why this is so pointless? Or do you think they're always, just from your point now? Do you feel like that there's still so much unexplored potential, and even these stories you don't necessarily think you want, they write them so well you're gonna care by the time it gets to it?
I think the show could do a crap present day story just as much as it could do a crap flashback. And I think it all boils down to whether what you're seeing is good. Because if this episode was a disaster, you'd be going, maybe they've run out of backstory, but it's not. So you're not. It purely depends on the possibilities of the flashbacks are, especially when they don't have to be, tied to mythology in the way we've just discussed, then the possibilities of flashbacks are just as big as the possibilities of present day. It is all about whether the stories are good enough.
Do you think one potential thing to this episode that never occurred to me until I rewatched it is it's always been a bit of a mystery why Rose chose, because because it seems really clean when you watch this episode why Rose would make a choice to have a kid, but then you go, and this is where you start deep diving and realizing that maybe it's way more complicated than that. She doesn't choose to have a kid. She chooses to become one in a weird way because she becomes Steven. She gives up her physical form for that to happen. And you've got to assume she knew that would happen. And if she didn't, then it's a very different situation. But working under the assumption...
I think her attitude on the video episode suggests she knew.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right.
Doesn't
absolutely.
she get sad? And
no, you're right. Absolutely right. So, okay, so working under the assumption she knew. But that raises a heap of questions. So, do you think in that moment when she's saying, it's amazing, you're born and you're given this chance to grow and to become, you're expected to become your own person, she's going, I wish that could be me.
Oh, possibly. Yeah.
Like, I wish I had that opportunity to grow and learn and become a person of my own, instead of where I am now, where I'm this gem that was grown with a purpose and a job. And while I've already bucked that trend by rebelling, that's still in me. That's still part of me. I'm the society I come from doesn't expect that. Do you? Does that, in some ways, harm your opinion of Rose's choice to have a kid? Because it always felt like it was born out of love, but in a weird way, if that played an element into it, does that? Again, this is another Dan being devil's advocate rather than voicing his own thoughts, but does that not harm the sort of more loving relationship, to think that it may have been slightly more selfish than we initially assumed, that decision?
I think it's a hard one to answer without knowing. Like, seemingly, she has no consciousness. She has no memories. It's not like, whilst she has become Steven.
Oh, you're right. So it's more that she it's essentially that she had to die to make him a thing.
Yeah, she's not growing. Steven's growing.
Yeah, you're right. But she is a part of him, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think without
he doesn't
knowing
have her memories.
Yeah, so she is a part of him, but it's that line and that distinction that, at least the period I'm watching it, they haven't necessarily clarified. So I think that's a hard one to judge, but it's certainly an interesting angle on it. I think it's interesting that, like, her faith in Garnet and her taking on of Garnet and Amethyst and to some degree Pearl is she must clearly believe in growth. She must clearly believe in gems evolving, because Garnet is an evolution of Ruby and Sapphire, and Amethyst is a revolution of what she should have been, and what she was born. She has gone against what she was born to be. So I think she has to believe in growth. I think she's just fascinated by it, and putting a really interesting perspective on, like, what I call it, like, they're tiny, they don't talk, they're so different, yet they are us. And I think maybe what you're bringing up is a really interesting notion, but I suspect what it was certainly more going for was a reflection of her affection for mankind.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that I think.
Yeah,
I think what can happen when you watch this show too much as well, you start reading into stuff in ways that maybe it wasn't intended, which is possibly what I've done there. But I don't know. It hit me in that moment. I never saw it from that angle. But that was.
Did you?
Oh.
No, go on.
No.
No, you finish.
You had a question.
Did you? Were we meant to potentially think that Sour Cream's mum had feelings for Greg, or they were just friends, or?
I think
you could easily read all of.
Yeah, you could read it that way. I always thought of it as they were just friends.
I thought of it as friendship, but I think the reason I asked that, the reason it fascinates me, is because I just love this notion. Like, I'd love an episode of her, Amethyst, and Greg just getting up to some shit. Like, this notion that if Amethyst and her were friends, and then her and Greg are friends, is there a,
I think
I want to see more of that world in flashback. And it's what's interesting is I completely agreed with whenever, and taking Fantastic Beasts out of the equation and anything else that Rowling has done since the 7 Harry Potter books were finished.
Yeah.
at the time, someone said, "Are you ever going to do a prequel with James and Lily and all that kind of stuff?" And she said, "No, because you've got all the information you need." And I completely agreed with that. I completely saw her point, completely agreed, had no real desire to see it. Whereas I think what's so powerful about Steven Universe is I have a desire to see the stories that we haven't seen that don't matter. Because with James and Lily and Sirius and stuff, we've not seen... get ready for this pun. We've not seen James and Sirius pottering about, but I don't feel we need to see it. We've seen or heard or know about what we need to know about. With Steven Universe, I quite want to see the characters of that time pottering about. I want to see these random side adventures.
What's the difference though? And I'm not being glib here. I mean, I literally go, what is the difference in terms of, from your perspective, between the backstory of Harry Potter and the backstory of this? I'm curious at where the line is. What's Rebecca Sugar done differently when developing this world to J.K. Rowling that makes you feel like you want that?
I think maybe the different format, and the fact that the Harry Potter, the flashbacks were always kind of to give information. They didn't set up a scenario where they could go anywhere with the flashbacks. So if they're always for information, if I've got the information, fine. This episode says the flashbacks can also be entertaining. And they can be just to entertain. And I don't mean to be we do get a lot of character development. I'm not in anything I said dismissing that. But fundamentally, this is arguably for, you could make an argument that this is for entertainment, and it delivers great entertainment. So
I wonder. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of why I think it might be different. And I've got a potential theory that it's to do with the active nature of the characters. In the world of Harry Potter, if you do a flashback, genuine, like, tell a story in the past sort of thing, whether it's via one chapter of the book is just set in the past or whatever because Harry falls into the pensive, or you do a separate book or whatever. I think you only really want things like that when it informs the present. And I don't just mean from a story and like information perspective. I mean from a character perspective as well. And with Harry Potter, the characters that were central to our story didn't have that deeper past because they were children, and the characters that you could potentially get in flashback are either dead or only tertiary anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know how much you'd gain from a Harry Potter flashback. The only character that you could gain from having loads of flashbacks for is Voldemort, and we get that in Half-Blood Prince. It's a whole book of Voldemort flashbacks.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
So is it just because in the world of Steven Universe, because Steven sort of becomes Rose and the gems live eternally, and therefore when we get the flashback and it's and it's to do with the gems, those characters are still around and central to the show, and Greg is still around and central to the show. Do you know what I mean? So maybe that's the difference. The only character that arguably it could not be in those flashbacks is Steven.
Yeah, I think that's fair because you're not cutting back to James to see and this isn't fundamentally, this episode exists just to tell us how he got a job. So there's no, but it's when we've flashed back to tension between Pearl and Greg, and then we flash forward and see how that tension manifests itself.
But yeah, can I just at some point can we talk about that moment as well when all the gems come in the little montage at the beginning, and
Pearl looks annoyed,
and he goes to high five them, and everyone high fives him except for Pearl, and it's just like, oh, that's brutal, savage.
Yeah. Pearl was not happy.
No, not a fan of Greg.
Yeah. I thought it was thoroughly entertaining. You got any other notes?
Well, I was curious if you enjoyed the song. I really like the song.
Yeah, I don't mind the song. It's not. I think by virtue of the fact that they subtly start to sing another song at the end, sort of implies they weren't 100% confident on the song themselves. Remember this one though? Yeah, you like Van Hart? Yep, cool. But I didn't
I
mind
don't know.
the song.
I love that song because it works on so many levels. Because a lot of, like some of the lyrics is like it's a full-time job admiring all the ways that you're inspiring. Like that's such a great line. And then also when he's saying I think I need a little change at the beginning, he's talking about changing his life, but at the end, of course, he's then busking, and he literally means I need a little change. And like
Yeah, I thought the song was really clever. I'm just saying, like, it made me laugh that they themselves then did a little encore, a little reprise of a different song. Just
let me
almost
drive my
implying-
vanity out. Which, but to be fair, though, I didn't see it as that. I saw that as a little nod to maybe this is when
Yeah,
he wrote
and
that song. Because let me
and
drive
he
my
changes
vanity
the
your heart.
words.
Yeah, because he does
He
it
changes
as like
the words to fit the car park and the car wash and stuff. So
yeah, I think absolutely. There are a couple of little notes. Obviously, as you correctly pointed out, that Sour Cream's voice as an infant is unchanged from his voice as a teenager, which there was very intentional. Obviously, Greg does sing "Let me drive your van." Let me drive my van into your wash instead of "Let me drive my van into your heart."
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, well, I say apparently, I clocked it as well. But when Greg shouts, "Rose, get me off this crazy thing," that's obviously a reference to the Jetsons. If you remember the intro to the Jetsons, George Jetson would get stuck on a thing that spun round, and he'd always yell. What was his wife's called in the Jetsons? Oh God, I've forgotten. I'm sitting there, Jane.
I have
Jane,
no
yeah.
idea.
Meet George Jetson, and then I had to do the song in my head to get her name because it goes Meet George Jetson, Jane, his wife, and then so I had to just remember the song to the Jetsons to remember her name. But he's like, Jane, get me off this crazy thing, and then she goes and saves him. That's a direct reference to the Jetsons. Yeah, so there you go. What else?
Cool.
Sour Cream's face between the whole episode resembles some internet thing called Lenny face, which I do not get. Don't understand what that is, but I'm reading it out for everyone who's listening to this who understands what the fuck that is.
No idea.
Nope. I refuse to Google it. If it's some meme I've missed out on, I refuse to look it up. You shouldn't have to look up a meme. You either get it or you don't. And if I don't get it, then maybe it's too much of a deep cut for me and my old man like grumpiness. Greg's playing a game called Potato Bros, which is obviously a reference to Mario Bros.
I didn't get that one. That's good.
Yeah, I thought that was a neat little trick. Obviously, you already pointed out the Lil Butler reference as the advert for it on
awesome.
Dahlia's TV, and he's like, "Oh, that's
so clever."
And the hint is like that show is starting soon, which means that obviously because if memory serves, didn't they hint that like they both got into that show after Rose went away? I can't remember if that was the hint, and it was like that was like Greg's like slump after he lost Rose. I can't remember. If is that how they
basically,
is that how they timed it? I can't remember.
Well,
I'm sure,
at the very least, they watched a lot of the show after she went.
yeah, in the comments below, if I've got that wrong, remind me. And I'm sure you will. Let's have a look. And I'm sure I'm sure several people will do it as well. I love that. Whenever we ask for information, we don't have that many comments. We only ever have a handful. I love that 3 or 4 people will give the same information. Like, I love this idea that no one's even bothered just to double check if anyone got there first. So we'll get like 8 messages with like the episode where I said about get out of Dodge and you hadn't heard that phrase, and I was like, anyone heard it? Literally everyone who put yes then put the same explanation for how it started, which was a fascinating bit of trivia. But I love that no one else noticed the other 10 people that had done it.
Hey, I'll take comments, man. You wanna comment the same shit someone else has, comment away.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, actually, because we do love the comments either way. So yeah, sorry, that sounded really negative, and I didn't mean it to.
Were there any other? Because I've got a cool thing. I thought they were going to do that. I kind of wish they had.
Oh, okay. Well, one last little note was that Greg, the book he's reading, Passions of Zanzor, is a book that showed up in Maximum Capacity that Stephen picks up, and I'm pretty sure it's the one that Greg snatches off him and is like, no, you don't get to read this. I guess that's the Steven Universe equivalent to 50 Shades or something, I'm not sure. Rose and Greg are seen reading it together in this episode.
I like the odd implications to that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's what it is, but like, in fact, let me click on it here because it's a link, and let's see.
It was such. I remember that gag. It was so weird.
Yeah, okay, so it's like, I'm looking at the cover of it, and it's like an alien woman holding like a beefy man. That's hilarious. So there's a weird parallel there to.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's actually showed up. Cool. It's the third appearance. It also showed up in Mr. Greg.
Yeah, is that when they're clearing out?
No,
Or is
that's
that-
so maximum capacity is when they're clearing out. Stephen finds it in the storage unit, and he said he says he'd let Stephen read that in a few years when he gets older and takes it off him. So it's implying that it's written for adults. In Mr. Greg, while Greg searches for a postcard from Empire City to show Stephen to be like, let's go to Empire City, the book can be spotted under Greg's underwear in his van.
Oh God, that's a weird thread. I thought at one point you see like he goes to a restaurant, and I thought it would have been quite cool if there'd have been like, I don't know, like food scattered everywhere, or some indication that the restaurant war had just happened. I thought that would be quite funny.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like maybe they're in the midst of selling competitive products or something. But maybe
just some little hints at it.
Yeah,
that would
maybe the
cool.
implication was it happened longer ago than that, but I was almost half expecting that.
Yeah, I do like that he picks up fry bits from the trash can during. I think he need a little change.
Yeah.
Because I just like the idea that fry bits have been a thing for him and him since before Stephen. I think it's a neat thing. I think that's all the notes. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
No. I'm good. We can go have your treats, sir. Dan.
Treats. Yeah. I was supposed to text Nadia so she'd go fetch it and it'd be back in time for this. 'Cause she was like, she's hungry. But what I've realised I've done is I didn't text her to say we were nearly done because I was like, I don't know how long this is going to go on for. And now we're gonna. Well, at least we can go out for it together now. Keep each other company.
Yeah,
you can
go for a little.
The benefit though would have been that I would have been able to finish this podcast and immediately had pizza waiting for me. The downside.
Well, now you get the treat of walking with her.
Yeah.
Walk with Nadia.
Treats. Anyway, yeah. So we'll call it there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. So that's everything for this week. Greg Babysitter. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's good.
I liked it.
It's great.
It's funny. I've been Dan
That's
Newton.
the short version of the.
Okay, should I do the longer one? Should I do the longer version?
No, the short version of the podcast. Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, me too.
That was good. Yeah, thanks. Bye, guys. I think that's how we should do next week's episode. Be like, Gem Hunt. Yeah, it's good. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, no, great.
Cool. All right, I've been done doing. Just move on. Like, I think that'd be great. But that is everything for this week. We will see you next. I think it's Tuesday. I guess this the next one will be on as we talk about Gem Hunt. So I've been Dan Doolan.
I've been Chris Billingham.
And we'll see you next time as we discuss Gem Hunt.